So today's workshop, thanks everyone for attending. So today's workshop, I'm just going to go through some budgeting like foundations. So it's not going to be me doing a heap of modeling in Excel. That's not what today's about. It's more about the stages before you start the modeling piece, which sometimes I think is more important than actually doing the modeling. So so that's what we're going to go through today. So for those of you who've attended, at the end, if you could pop your video on, because we are going to do, I do allow for Q&As. So rather than me just speaking the whole time, it'd be great if we can do some Q&As at the end. That's a bit I enjoy. So feel free to either pop it in the chat as I go through this, or just unmute yourself and ask at the end. So the couple of you that potentially may not know me, my name's Alicia Randall. I have been working with fast growth businesses, startups and scale-ups for 18 years now. In the UK, I have experienced 2 successful exits, so an Amazon acquisition with LoveFilm and an IPO with Funding Circle. I've had like a lot of experience within the startup and scale up world. And since 2019, I created Fast Growth Consulting. We do 2 things. We do that fractional CFO service with founders, and then we also train new and aspiring finance directors within this space. So today, the agenda, I wanted to go through aligning those budgetings with the organizational goals. It really is the step 1. The second thing was managing risks. So just looking at rolling forecasts and when you would potentially want to do that with startups and scale-ups in particular. Would never do that with corporate. And then some tips and principles that I use still today with all of my clients. So the first thing, as I said, I wanted to go through was the business goals before budgeting. So essentially what they are is you're looking for, originally the mission and the vision, but then you want to understand what the strategic and operational goals are of the business before you open up any Excel spreadsheet. So ideally, these strategic and particularly the operational goals should be SMART goals. If you don't know what that is, it is a goal that is very specific, it is measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant, and it's timely. So you don't just want to have a goal of, oh, we want to hit this number of revenue. Ideally, you want to know what revenue, like as in which channel, what specifically, when you want to achieve that, whether that's attainable or not, whether it's relevant. So is it relevant to, say, the mission or the vision or the strategic goals, if you're looking at operational goals, and then the time of it. So when do you want to achieve those goals? So ideally, the main reason why you want to do this is because the budget needs to be aligned with what the business plans on achieving. So there's no point in the management and leadership team deciding that these are all the things that they're planning on doing over the next 12 months, and the budget's got nothing to do with it. So they really have to be aligned, and also then your management team will get buy-in. So they will, if you're working with them on making sure that you turn all of their goals into the budget, then they will agree with the budget and try and hit those goals. So as I said, business goals before budgeting. So it's really important to say that the budget isn't there to set the goals or the targets of the business. So but often founders don't even know this. So I've certainly started working with a founder. They have asked me and my team that we have to start writing budgets as soon as we, sign the contract. And actually, I have to take a step back and ask them, what are your strategic and operational goals, so that I can put this budget together, and they don't know what they are. So you really need to make sure that these goals are in existence, and make sure that your founder understands that we need to know what those goals are before you start budgeting. So ideally, again, going to the leadership team, asking for all of these goals. You then create the budget to check that these strategic and operational goals make financial sense. If they don't make financial sense because the budget is just looking too horrendous, then you need to go back to the operational goals and change them so that they do make financial sense. So that is the point of the budget. It's just checking the financial validity and doing a health check that what the business is planning on doing makes financial sense, not the other way around. So to go through all of those levels of vision, mission, strategic and operational goals, sometimes you as a finance leader, particularly have a really young leadership team, you need to kind of drive these conversations. And also, if they're presenting them to you, you need to make sure that they're, not necessarily accurate, but they make sense, as in what you need in order to create that budget. So a mission statement is usually a statement on what the business does today, and a vision is what the business wants to achieve in the future and what they want to become in the future. Usually the vision and the mission is created by the founder or founders when they start the business. Certainly the vision, but not necessarily the mission. And I've certainly worked with businesses where these vision and mission statements haven't even been communicated to the staff. So make sure that you eke that out from the founders and ensure that it's circulated. So a couple of examples, the Google's mission statement is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Their vision is to provide access to the world's information in one click. So you can see that the first one is what they are doing today, and the second one is, their overarching purpose of existing. So LinkedIn, their mission statement is to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful, which they absolutely do today. Their vision is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. So that's their overarching purpose for existing. One thing that one of my favorite, just as a bit of a joke, one of my favorite is an old Pepsi mission. You may have heard this before. It just had two statements, and that was beat Coke, which I thought was quite funny. But ideally, when the business has a mission and a vision, then everything it does should align with what these vision and mission statements are saying. So ideally, it should help with prioritization. And when setting the strategic goals, it is thinking about the vision and the mission statement. So, when the iPod came out, quite famously, they talked about it just had to go fast, be small. I can't remember the exact things. And any kind of pivot or any kind of feature they wanted to add to the iPod, they would, Steve Jobs would ask, does it make it smaller, faster, better, whatever it was. So it's just really helping the whole business prioritize, and it's a way of setting the direction of the business. So once you have the vision and mission, and again, generally this is done at the beginning of the business, in order to achieve those vision and missions, then the strategic goals are set. So usually it's about 3 or 5 goals. They're quite longer term. They can be 12 to 3 years, sometimes even 5 years. And these ones are that big kind of picture thinking. So these ones may be, we want to hit X number of revenue or subscribers by this period using this channel, that kind of thing. And these ones can be that real big picture thinking. And often, if you have North Star KPIs, they are aligned to the strategic goals. So these ones should absolutely be communicated to the business. Everybody needs to know what they're working towards. And these get reviewed probably annually, but they're also agreed often with the board. So off the back of those strategic goals, then finally we get to the ones that are much more tangible, that each department generally focuses on, and that is the operational goals. They can be set annually, but if you're a quick moving business, they're usually set quarterly. If you have OKRs, this is an operational goal, and usually each department or a couple of departments will have their operational goals that they're focusing on for the next, say, 3 months. And all of these operational goals should be so that the business can hit the strategic goals. So you can see it's kind of a waterfall effect of all of these different things. And it's the operational goals and strategic goals that you're very interested in when you're putting a budget together. So an example of an OKR is the objective might be to run the London Marathon in under 4.5 hours, which is quite advantageous. And then as part of each of those objectives, you would have the little things that, say, each department, or, you know, in this case, individual, would do to achieve that overarching operational goals. So your key result 1 might be doing that couch to 5K method. You have to complete it within 6 weeks. You want that to be done within 40 minutes of non-stop running. So you can see it's very specific. It's giving the timing, it's giving the measurement, and it's giving what you need to achieve. Key result 2, same thing. You go from 5K to 10K in the next week, 8 weeks. Then you go to a 20K to marathon training guide for 4 months in the lead up of the marathon date in April 2025. And then you also want to do strength training 1 to 2 times per week. So if you do all of those things, you should be able to run the London Marathon in under 4.5 hours. So the reason why I did this is because, you know, it's easy. It's very easy to understand. But it's worth saying that if one of the, say, the strategic goals or operational goals is that you want to get to, say, a certain number of revenue or a certain number of subscribers in the next 12 months, then there needs to be very clear steps on how to get there. There's no point in setting a goal when you don't have a plan on how to get there. And so this is very much what you need to work with your leadership team and challenge the business on how they're going to hit those overarching goals. So once you have done, you've got all of these goals and all of these goals, then it's really easy, and you've got the detail behind them, then it's very easy then to start building your budget, because you know all of the things that you want to hit from a detailed point of view. When you've put it all together, you can see whether you hit those strategic goals based on this one. And then generally the operational goals will include additional resources needed. So whether that is software, whether that is headcount, whether that is, you know, sales targets, all of these different KPIs, you are basically collating all of these things together to then produce your budget. Generally, once you've done this once, you'll find that you're spending way too much and not hitting the overarching revenue. And so that's when you go back and revisit how you can be a bit more realistic from a finance point of view, but still hit these strategic goals. So there is quite a bit of preparation and encouraging the leadership team to do this preparation before you get to the budget section. Okay, so I just wanted to introduce the concept of rolling forecasts. So this is I'm a big believer in rolling forecasts, particularly at early stage businesses, especially if they've pre-product market fit or only just post-product market fit. I find that working with that early stage businesses, the KPIs and the results can be out of date really quickly. But also fast growth businesses. So if you're achieving a huge amount of growth, particularly, 100% year-on-year growth kind of vibe, then you will also find that anything you put together in a budget, after about 3 months, it's probably going to be out of date. So this is why rolling forecasts are really useful. The other main reason, this is potentially the number one reason, is because you can keep a close eye on cash runway. So it's very difficult to manage and forecast your cash runway if you don't have a rolling forecast, because cash burn isn't a useful metrics in a growing business and a business that's pivoting, because 3 months ago's cash burn has got no relevance whatsoever on what your cash burn is today. So you do need to have a rolling forecast that you can review and go through with your founder, probably on a monthly basis. So you can also use this for budget resource allocation. So, scarce resources is one of the biggest issues with startups and scale ups, whether that be time, staff resources, cash resources, marketing, cash resources. So being able to, or even inventory. So being able to review a rolling forecast so that you can allocate the resources in a quick and nimble way, but also a way where you can review what's worked and what's not worked and tweak that knowledge going forward, really makes it useful for founders and the leadership team. And then once the business is a bit more stable, it's a bit more, you're able to tell what is coming up, and you're not having to pivot all the time and constantly learning. Then you can start locking in targets when a bit more stable, and perhaps a rolling forecast is not necessarily useful. But I would say if you've got huge amount of growth, have to be really tight on cash runway, or you're at that early stage and still learning, then a rolling forecast is the way to go. And then finally, just a few different areas on that early stage budget processing before you start doing the Excel spreadsheet is the first one is over communication. So I mean, as I said here, I cannot stress enough how much communication you need to do with the budgeting team, particularly if you've got a young, inexperienced leadership team. But actually, to be fair, even if you've got an experienced budgeting team, you would still have to do a significant amount of communication. So I personally find, even when I've emailed everyone, Slacked everyone, talked to everyone face to face in a meeting, or in the leadership team meeting in Zoom, and I think I'm just a parrot and I'm repeating myself over and over and over and over, and I've probably over communicated. There is still someone in the leadership team that says, "Oh, I didn't know that I had to do that." So it's like almost impossible to over communicate budget processing. So unless it's just you and the founder that's putting the budget together, with a little bit of input from the operational team and the commercial teams, if the leadership team, if you're leaning on them for quite a bit of information, again, you cannot over communicate. It's almost impossible. The next one is planning. So you really need to, as I said, ideally include a communication plan. So if, say, for example, you need something by a certain date, remind them the day before, remind them 3 days before, remind them a week before, remind them a month before, and then then maybe if you're lucky, they might actually hit your deadlines. I can guarantee though you probably won't. So you always need to allow for staff holidays. So ask the leadership team or their PAs, if you're that way, whether they whether the leadership team or anyone that you're relying on for information have holidays. So, and just put that within your timelines to make sure that you cover that off. I know that from a mistake I've made, we were heavily reliant on a CRO in a fintech business, and he was 2 weeks holiday just before deadlines. And that, really kind of rocked us a bit. So make sure you know who's going on holidays when. And then similarly, build in buffers. So as I said, if you're relying on people, they're probably not going to hit your deadlines. So if you expect something by a certain date, maybe tell them 2 days earlier, and you know, if you're lucky, you might get everything in when you need it. And then with the timeline, so again, consider when you need to deliver the budget to the board. So generally this requirement will be sitting, excuse me, I'm about to cough. Generally this will be in the shareholder agreement. So if you haven't looked at your shareholder agreement before, I would highly recommend you get a copy of the latest. And within that, it will tell you who and when a budget needs to be approved by potentially investors, but generally the board. Only investor if they are on the board and a lead investor, but generally it will say when you need to do that. And then you should work backwards from that. So if, say, for example, they want to review the budget by, it has to be done before the end of the year, work out when the board meeting is, say it's the beginning of December, you probably need about a week of creating slides and sending it out to them. And so then again, just keep working backwards. And so that you know when you need to start creating the budget, who needs to be involved, what needs to be done by when. Always allow for a couple of weeks of tweaking and you know, review, and as I said, put in lots of buffers. And so it's worthwhile doing it this way. Also because if you're running a finance function, you can't spend 100%, particularly if you don't have FP&A. I mean, if you have FP&A, great, they do it all for you. But if you don't have FP&A and you're doing it, you need to make sure you have enough time to do other parts of your role. You don't want to be spending 3 months solid doing a budgeting process. So allow yourself time. There obviously is a balance between results to help you build your budget, and generally you will need to budget Q4 as well as the next financial year. But you don't want to be rushing it at the end, particularly because you need to allow for buffers, you need to allow for revision, you need to allow for staff holidays and all those kind of things. So anyway, so this is the financial leadership framework that I go through with my students, and these bottom 4 is exactly what we do when we're working with our founders. And today we went through an element of adding value, so that kind of growth model, budgeting, scenario testing, that area. But this is how we prepare for a budget before we even start opening an Excel spreadsheet. So we do have a free resource. It's called the Finance Leadership Scorecard. It's all the elements of this framework, essentially, in order to be a strong finance leader for a startup and scale up. And there's a quiz on each of the sections. So each section has a handful of questions. They're yes/no answers, so they're really easy. And there you can look at, you know, all of the areas that you really strong at, and potentially the areas where you have a few gaps, and you need further research to kind of fill those gaps. So if this is something you wanted to go through with me, then feel free to put in a Calendly meeting. So we'll put that in the chat. Oh yeah, it's in the chat, and we'll also email it to you. So feel free to book a session with me and we can go through that together. Questions? Any questions on budgeting? So feel free to jump in. Either just unmute yourself or put something in the chat. One thing I do get asked a fair bit is software. So what kind of budgeting software that I use. Most of my clients are very early stage, so they don't have a huge budget for software. So we generally are still using Excel. And also because it's a pre-fundraise, usually investors want the model in Excel so they can play with it and they can give it to their analysts. So we are still doing that at the moment. We are, however, doing a bit of research on some different forecasting models. We tried out Fathom. I wouldn't recommend Fathom for budgeting. It's very good for reporting, backwards looking, and board reports and those sort of things. It's very good actually in consolidation, but it's not very good for forecasting. I don't like their model at all. We tested it out with one of the clients and it's terrible. So one of the ones that a lot of the CFOs in my network use is Casual. Casual, I think, is about £1,000 a month. So if you want to if you do have budget and your company has budget, then Casual might be one to look at. So we are going to start looking at that one as well. So I know quite a few people that have used it and they quite like it. So yeah, it's one area that still needs a bit of work, but it's quite good. Lisa asked, any available budget templates out there to use and build on? So free ones. So obviously we provide our students with some models and templates in Excel. But if you have a venture capitalist investor, they do have some specific models that you can download. So I think Index Ventures might have a SAS model in Excel that you can download. They've got quite a good one. I'm not sure about any others, but I would have a look at your venture capitalist. No Local Globe, they have quite a strong finance support. And so they might be able to help with a Excel template if you want. As I said, we obviously have one in our program, but I don't make this available otherwise. But yeah, so check out your venture capitalist finance support. They might be able to have, because obviously they see hundreds and hundreds of Excel budgets all the time. Obviously it's going to be more leaning towards a growth model, so more the way that the investor wants to see it. But if that's what you need budgeting for, then yeah, that should work for you. Any other questions at all? No? Okay, that's fine. Let me know what you found useful as well. It'd be really good to see what you've kind of taken away from today's workshop. It's quite interesting for me to know what you found useful. So please do either drop that in the chat or just respond to an email when we send out the replay. And then, yeah, do look at booking that scorecard. As I said, the quiz, it's for free. They're quite quick and easy answers. It probably take you about 10 minutes. So have a look at the at that, and then you can test yourself out. So yeah, the slides will be coming with the replay, so you will get a full replay, and then obviously all the slides will be there. So Alina, you'll get those slides, not a problem. So you can see the beginning, the part that you missed. No problem. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining. And again, please do leave some feedback. I really like to know what you found useful, and hopefully I'll get to chat to you again soon. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Alicia.